When a man suddenly goes silent, a woman's mind doesn't stay calm. It starts running marathons. And the truth is, she won't admit it, but silence hits her harder than words ever could. Because silence isn't empty, it's full of questions, full of doubts, full of emotions she tries so hard to control. Today, I'm going to reveal exactly what happens inside a woman's mind when you stop talking, why her thoughts spiral even when she looks normal on the outside, and how female psychology reacts to distance in ways you never imagined. Get ready, because once you understand this, you will never look at silence the same way again. Silence is one of the most powerful psychological triggers a woman experiences because it taps directly into the emotional wiring that makes her feel safe, connected, and valued. When a man goes quiet, even if it's unintentional, a woman's mind begins to fill in the blanks faster than she can control. She starts wondering if something is wrong, if she did something, if he lost interest, or if he is simply pulling away. Women naturally seek emotional clarity, and when they don't get it, they create their own explanations, and those explanations often lean toward worst case scenarios. It's not because she's dramatic or insecure. It's because her brain is designed to detect emotional shifts as a way of protecting the relationship. So when silence enters the picture, her mind reads it as a sign that something is changing, and her thoughts begin to race in directions she never expected. As the silence continues, she begins connecting dots that don't even exist. She replays past conversations, scans over every recent detail, and searches for hidden meanings in your last words. She starts thinking about whether you seemed distant earlier, whether you replied slower, or whether your tone changed. These small observations become big theories in her mind. This is the emotional overthinking phase where silence doesn't just feel like a pause. It feels like a signal. She doesn't want to lose you, but she also doesn't want to seem needy. So she stays quiet while fighting battles internally. This is where many men misunderstand women, because while she looks calm, inside she's experiencing a storm of thoughts that she's too proud to express. Silence also challenges her sense of emotional security. When she doesn't hear from you, she begins to question her place in your life. She wonders whether she matters as much as she thought she did. Female psychology is deeply connected to the fear of emotional abandonment, even if it's subtle or temporary. When you stop communicating, it triggers that fear. Her brain goes into a mode where she feels something valuable is slipping away, and she becomes hyper-aware of every tiny detail. This is why her reactions may seem intense, because silence doesn't just affect her logically, it affects her emotionally, and emotions are powerful forces that guide her decisions, thoughts, and behavior. Another layer is ego. She doesn't want to message you first because she wants to feel valued, not like she's the one chasing. So now she's torn between wanting clarity and wanting pride. This inner conflict creates even more emotional tension. She might talk to her friends, ask for advice, or pretend she doesn't care, but deep down, she's waiting for a message, a call, a sign that the connection is still intact. Her silence back at you isn't real silence. It's a response to the emotional discomfort she's feeling. She wants you to reach out first because that reassures her that she still matters to you. Your silence also activates her imagination in ways that amplify the situation. She starts imagining scenarios of you losing interest, talking to someone else, or slowly detaching. Even if none of that is happening, her mind tells her stories that create emotional pressure. This is why a simple lack of communication can turn into a full emotional spiral. She begins to wonder what she means to you, what you're feeling, and whether she misread your intentions all along. These thoughts stack up until she feels overwhelmed, even if she tries to hide it. When silence becomes long enough, she enters the stage of emotional self-protection. She starts telling herself that she doesn't care, that she can move on, that she shouldn't rely on anyone. She builds emotional walls because the silence feels like rejection. This doesn't happen instantly, but it happens gradually, and this is where men often realize too late that their silence changes the dynamic. She becomes colder, more distant, not because she wants to be, but because silence taught her to protect herself. At the same time, silence heightens her awareness of her own feelings. It makes her realize how much she cares, how much she invested, how much she expected from you. Silence exposes emotions she usually keeps buried. She starts noticing that she misses your attention, your presence, your conversations. These realizations make the silence even louder inside her mind. And through all of this, she waits for a signal from you, something small, something simple, something that tells her she wasn't wrong about your connection. Your silence creates emotional noise in her mind, and that noise becomes the reason she starts thinking deeper about you, the relationship, and what comes next, the internal battle between ego, fear, and attachment inside a woman's mind. When you go silent is far more intense than most men ever realize, because it's a war she fights quietly, secretly, and constantly, even while pretending everything is normal on the outside. The moment communication stops, her mind splits into different voices trying to pull her in opposite directions, and this emotional tug of war becomes the reason she can't think straight. One part of her wants to reach out and ask what's wrong. Another part refuses to message first because she doesn't want to look desperate. And a third part is terrified that your silence is a sign of rejection. This inner conflict makes her act calm on the outside, but restless on the inside. And the more the silence continues, the louder those voices become. If you stay with me right now, you're going to understand a side of female psychology that very few people ever talk about. Her ego is usually the first to react. Ego tells her she should wait, she should stay strong, she should not give you the satisfaction of knowing she cares. Ego tells her that if she messages first, she loses her power. Ego tells her that a high-value woman shouldn't chase a man, so she tries to stay still, tries to look unaffected, tries to convince herself that she's fine without communication. But ego is loud only in the beginning. When the silence becomes longer, ego starts cracking, and that's when fear steps in. Fear whispers a completely different story. And if you pay attention, this part will help you understand exactly why silence affects her so deeply. Fear tells her something is wrong. Fear tells her you're losing interest. Fear tells her you're talking to someone else. Fear tells her she is not enough. Fear takes her mind to the darkest possibilities, even when reality is simple. Fear reminds her of past relationships where silence meant the end. Fear reminds her of the times she trusted someone and got hurt. Fear creates scenarios that feel real, even though they're only in her mind. This is where her internal battle becomes intense, because now ego says, don't reach out. But fear says, what if this is the last chance to save it? And she starts feeling torn between protecting her pride and protecting the relationship. If you're still watching, this is exactly the part where you begin to see how silence shapes her emotional world. Then comes attachment, which doesn't argue loudly like ego or scream like fear, but quietly influences everything. Attachment is the emotional bond she built with you through conversations, energy, attention, and affection. Attachment makes her miss you. Attachment makes her check her phone. Attachment makes her reread your old messages. Attachment makes her think about the moments you made her feel special. Attachment tells her she cares more than she admits. And because attachment is soft, it usually wins over ego and fear, even if she tries to hide it. Attachment makes her hope that you will message. Attachment makes her want the connection back. Attachment makes her imagine how you'll return and what you'll say. This is the emotional weight she carries silently, and she carries it because the connection meant something to her. What makes this internal battle even stronger is the fact that she doesn't express it to you. She doesn't want to look weak. She doesn't want to look emotional. She doesn't want to look like she needs reassurance. So she acts normal, but she feels everything. She posts stories that look confident, replies slowly to seem unbothered, forces a smile in front of others. But every time her phone lights up, she hopes it's you. And here's the part you need to hear clearly the longer you stay silent, the more intense her internal conflict becomes, because silence doesn't just create distance, it creates imagination. And imagination is powerful, especially for someone who feels deeply. In this emotional storm, she starts questioning herself too. She wonders whether she said something wrong. She wonders whether she should have acted differently. She wonders whether she deserved this silence. She wonders why you pulled away. She wonders what you're thinking, and that's where her anxiety begins to grow. Her ego says she shouldn't care. Her fear says she cares too much. And her attachment says she cares because it was real. This mental contradiction makes her feel confused and vulnerable. And if you pay attention, this is the moment where she becomes emotionally unstable inside, even though she looks strong outside. Her internal battle eventually shapes her next behavior. If ego wins, she becomes colder. If fear wins, she becomes emotional or reactive. If attachment wins, she waits long, hoping the silence will break. And this is what most men never understand. Her reaction to your silence is not random. It is the outcome of a psychological battle she fought for hours or even days. She didn't just wake up distant. She didn't just suddenly become defensive. She didn't just decide to question everything. It all happened because her mind was trying to make sense of your silence while protecting her heart at the same time. When you go silent, you activate something deep inside her that she tries so hard to hide, the fear of losing the emotional connection she built with you. And this fear doesn't come from weakness. It comes from how the female mind is wired to protect what it values. The moment communication stops, she feels the bond between you shifting ever so slightly. And even if she keeps a calm face, she feels that shift like a sudden drop in temperature. She notices when your energy changes. She notices when your replies get shorter. She notices when the rhythm she was used to suddenly disappears. And if you stay with me right now, you'll understand exactly why this fear becomes so powerful inside her mind. Her fear of losing the connection begins with uncertainty. Women need emotional clarity to feel safe. And when silence replaces communication, everything feels uncertain. She doesn't know if you're busy, bored, annoyed, or done. And that uncertainty becomes a mental trigger that makes her overthink everything. She starts replaying your last conversation to see if she missed a sign. She starts analyzing her last message to see if she said something wrong. She starts imagining what you might be thinking right now. And those thoughts rarely lean towards something positive. She fills in the blanks with her own fears because silence gives her no answers. And while she's analyzing everything, what she really wants to know is something simple. Do you still care, or are you slowly drifting away as the silence gets longer? Her fear starts mixing with vulnerability. She doesn't want to lose someone she feels connected to, but she also doesn't want to look like she's emotionally dependent. So she fights this internal battle where she wants reassurance, but doesn't want to ask for it. She wants to reach out, but she doesn't want to seem clingy. She wants to check up on you, but she doesn't want you to think she's insecure. This fear forces her to play a role she doesn't want to play. She pretends she's strong while she's silently scared of losing the bond. And this silent fear creates a quiet panic inside her, a panic she won't show but definitely feels. What makes her fear even stronger is the memory of past experiences. Every woman has faced emotional distance before. Someone pulling away, someone losing interest, someone suddenly acting different. And when you go silent, her mind remembers those moments. It remembers the pain, the disappointment, the confusion. Her brain uses silence as a warning sign, replaying old wounds, reminding her what distance can lead to. She starts fearing that history is repeating itself, even if your silence has nothing to do with losing interest. Her mind becomes a battlefield between logic and memory usually wins. Another part of the fear comes from how emotionally invested she is. When a woman feels connected to someone, that connection becomes a part of her emotional life. So losing it doesn't feel like losing a conversation. It feels like losing a piece of her stability. She fears losing the comfort you brought, the attention you gave, the routine she got used to, the emotional oxygen you unknowingly provided. Women attach emotionally in layers, and silence feels like those layers are being peeled back one by one. This creates an emotional discomfort that she can't fully explain but deeply feels. And if you're listening closely, this is the exact moment where her mind begins to react more emotionally to your absence than to your presence. As her fear grows, she starts imagining different scenarios, and every scenario reflects her insecurity about losing the connection. She imagines you pulling away because you're no longer interested. She imagines you focusing on someone else. She imagines you slowly slipping out of her life. She imagines you moving on without saying it directly. These scenarios are painful, but her mind creates them because silence leaves too much space for imagination. Her thoughts become louder than the reality. And the more she imagines losing the connection, the more emotionally attached she feels, which makes the fear even stronger. This fear also affects her behavior. She might act distant because she doesn't want to show she's scared. She might act strong because she doesn't want you to know how much she cares. She might act uninterested because she's afraid of being the only one trying. But all these behaviors come from the same root, fear of losing the emotional connection she built with you. Every unanswered message, every unread text, every moment of silence becomes a reminder of the uncertainty she hates. She wants to trust that the connection is still there, but silence makes trust harder to hold on to. What she wishes you understood is that the connection matters more to her than she lets on. Your voice, your words, your consistency, they gave her emotional security, and when that disappears suddenly, it feels like the ground is shifting under her feet. She doesn't want to lose you. She doesn't want to lose what she felt with you. She doesn't want to lose the emotional comfort you brought into her life. So when you go silent, her fear isn't just about distance. It's about losing something she wasn't ready to let go of, something she hoped would stay, something she thought was real. When you emotionally withdraw, even slightly, she begins to test you, not because she wants drama, but because her mind is trying to measure whether the connection she believes in is still real. And this testing is a natural psychological response rooted in fear, curiosity, and a deep desire for reassurance. Women don't test men when they feel completely secure. They test when something feels off, when the silence feels too loud, or when your energy doesn't match the energy she once felt from you. And if you stay with me right now, you'll understand exactly why these tests happen and what goes on inside her mind when she gives them. Her first kind of test usually shows up in the form of distance. Instead of reaching out, she holds back. Instead of double texting, she waits. Instead of expressing confusion, she pretends to be unbothered. This isn't real distance. It's protective distance. She wants to see if you'll notice the shift. She wants to see if you'll put in the effort. She wants to see whether your silence was temporary or a sign of you pulling away. And this is where most men get confused, because when a woman goes distant in response to your emotional withdrawal, she's not pushing you away. She's trying to see if you'll pull her closer. If you're listening closely, this is the moment where female psychology becomes incredibly revealing. Her second type of test is subtle attitude changes. She may reply slower, not because she's busy, but because she wants to see if it affects you. She may give shorter answers, not because she's annoyed, because she wants to see whether you care enough to ask what's wrong. She may sound slightly cold, slightly less enthusiastic, slightly less available. This is her way of checking if your silence changed her value in your eyes. She's trying to understand whether you'll still show the same interest when her energy isn't as warm as before. And the only reason she tests you like this is because silence made her question where she stands in your life. Then come the emotional tests, which most men completely misinterpret. She might bring up a small issue just to see how you respond. She might challenge something you said earlier to test your confidence. She might ask something indirect to measure how honest or committed you are. These aren't random emotional reactions. They are stability tests. She wants to know if your silence was just a moment or a sign of emotional inconsistency. She wants to see whether you handle her emotional waves with maturity or whether you retreat even more. These tests are her way of checking whether the emotional connection is strong enough to survive tension. Another kind of test she gives is availability testing. She may suddenly become busy, take longer to reply, or cancel plans to see how you react. She wants to know if you value her time the way she valued yours. She wants to see whether your silence was a sign of disinterest or simply a temporary pause. If you chase aggressively, she assumes you're insecure. If you don't react at all, she assumes you don't care. But if you respond with balanced energy, not too much, not too little, she feels safe again. These tests are her way of recalibrating the emotional balance between you. Her most powerful tests, however, are emotional temperature checks. She might ask something like, "Are you okay?" Or, "You seem different lately." Not because she wants to confront you, but because she's trying to understand what changed. She wants to know if you're pulling away for a reason she can fix or for a reason she can't control. She tests you by observing how you communicate when feelings come into the picture. Do you shut down more? Do you open up? Do you explain? Do you avoid? Every answer gives her emotional data she uses to judge the connection. Silence from your side often makes her feel like she's losing something meaningful, and her tests are an attempt to pull truth out of the situation. She's trying to protect her heart, her dignity, and her emotional investment. She wants to know if she should keep giving her energy or start pulling back. She wants to know if you still see her the same way. She wants to know whether your silence was a pause or the beginning of the end. Her tests are not to punish you, they're to understand you. And there is one more thing you need to hear. Clearly, her tests are actually a sign that she still cares. If she didn't care, she wouldn't test, she wouldn't check, she wouldn't evaluate your reactions. Testing means she wants clarity. Testing means she wants reassurance. Testing means she's still emotionally attached. A woman who has emotionally checked out doesn't test. She leaves silently. But a woman who tests is trying to figure out whether she should stay emotionally invested or begin to detach, because your silence made her question the stability she once trusted. Controlled silence has the power to reset attraction and rebuild respect in ways most men never realize. Because when you pull back intentionally and not emotionally, you trigger a psychological shift inside her that makes her reassess your value, your role, and the connection she has with you. This isn't about playing games. It's about allowing space for clarity, balance, and emotional recalibration. When a woman feels a man's presence constantly, she becomes used to it. But when she feels his absence, controlled, calm, confident absence, her mind begins to wake up emotionally. And if you stay with me right now, you'll understand exactly why controlled silence can change everything in your favor. The moment you go intentionally quiet, not out of anger or insecurity, but out of emotional self-respect, she starts noticing things she didn't notice before. She becomes more aware of how much your presence mattered. She becomes more aware of the gap your silence creates. Controlled silence makes her reflect on her own behavior, something she rarely does when you're always available. She begins asking herself questions. Was she taking you for granted? Was she putting in enough effort? Was she appreciating your consistency? These questions only arise when silence creates space for reflection. Controlled silence also sends a message she deeply feels, that your attention is meaningful because you don't give it freely. When everything is available constantly, it loses value. When you pull back, the value of your presence rises. She starts thinking about the way you used to talk to her, the way you used to give her time, the way you used to care. And now that it's missing, she feels the difference intensely. This emotional contrast is what resets attraction. She starts craving the attention she once received effortlessly. She starts missing the consistency she assumed would always be there. She starts wanting the connection she didn't think she could lose. Another powerful effect of controlled silence is that it shifts the emotional dynamic. When you withdraw without hostility, she feels responsible for the distance. She feels like something on her end contributed to the gap. She may not say it, but she feels it. She starts adjusting her behavior, becoming more careful with her words, more attentive in conversations, more emotionally open. This is where respect begins to rebuild, because respect grows when a woman realizes she could lose access to you if she doesn't value you properly. Controlled silence teaches her that your emotional space is not something she can play with. What makes controlled silence so impactful is that it allows her emotions to breathe. When you talk constantly, emotions blur together. When you step back, emotions sharpen. She begins to miss specific things. Your voice, your humor, your attention, the way you made her feel emotionally stable. She might scroll through old conversations, replay moments, look at your photos, or revisit memories. All of this happens because silence creates emotional heightening. She becomes more aware of how much emotional satisfaction she got from you, and this craving naturally revives attraction. Controlled silence also reveals your emotional strength. A man who can distance himself without panic, insecurity, or aggression shows emotional independence, and emotional independence is extremely attractive. It tells her you are not controlled by her reactions. It tells her you don't depend on her validation. It tells her you can walk away if your respect is compromised. This stability makes her feel both challenged and drawn in. She realizes she can't manipulate you emotionally, she can't get lazy with her effort, and she can't assume you'll always be there no matter what. As your silence continues, she begins to evaluate her own feelings. She starts realizing that losing your emotional closeness feels uncomfortable. She starts feeling the emotional gap like a missing piece of her day. She starts wanting to fix things, reconnect, understand what shifted. This desire isn't forced. It's natural. Controlled silence makes her feel the weight of losing you, even temporarily. And that feeling motivates her to come closer. Her behavior begins to shift, even if subtly. She may start checking your online status more often. She may start replying faster than before. She may initiate conversations instead of waiting for you. She may become more affectionate, more expressive, more invested. She may give you more attention, more respect, more emotional presence. All of this is a response to the emotional recalibration caused by controlled silence. She now sees you not as someone guaranteed, but someone valuable. And here's the part you need to hear clearly. Controlled silence works because it resets the emotional balance without anger. It's not punishment. It's not manipulation. It's simply giving space for the connection to breathe, for her to miss you, for attraction to rebuild, and for respect to return naturally. It gives her the chance to realize your value on her own. And when a woman realizes it on her own, the shift becomes powerful, genuine, and lasting.